Hi everybody, this is Brett Lonsdale from Lightning Tools and welcome to a webinar. This webinar being on using Lightning Tools with inside Microsoft Teams. So what we're going to do is just have a very quick introduction as to who we are as a company, and then we're going to jump straight into Microsoft Teams, and we're going to take a look at 4 different products, which I'll talk to you about in just a second. So first of all, my name is Brett, and yeah, I founded Lightning Tools around about 14 years ago. I was a bit dark ahead back then and so on, but yeah, albeit. So we provide lots of different products around Microsoft SharePoint. And have been providing SharePoint tools for that 14 years of time. But over the last couple of years, we've also been building products or making our existing products available to the Microsoft Teams platform as well. And the ones that we're going to be talking about are the content aggregation tool, first of all. So that's our Lightning Conductor product, if you're not familiar with it. The Lightning Conductor, historically, if we go back to SharePoint 2007, back then, it was basically something that resolved some of the shortfalls of the content query web part, being that the content query web part could only aggregate from a single site collection. So we developed the Lightning Conductor. It allowed you to aggregate across different site collections, so you could build reports on SharePoint lists and so on. But as it's evolved, it's actually become something that's not just SharePoint lists anymore, but also you can bring in content from places like Search and also Microsoft Graph as well, which means that you could bring in things like planner tasks or OneDrive items, messages, and things like that. Anything basically that the Microsoft Graph makes available to you. So throughout the Microsoft 365 platform, you can aggregate content and provide a single view. And that's really the whole purpose, is to be able to go to a single view and see the content that is relevant to you as an individual or relevant to your team. So you're not having to jump from site to site or maybe from team to team in order to find the appropriate content. So we'll be taking a look at the Lightning Conductor. We're also going to take a look at one of our data visualization tools, and that is the data viewer. So this, in some respects, is similar to what the Lightning Conductor can provide for you, but it's working with data that is outside of Microsoft 365. So that data may be coming from something like a SQL database, SQL Azure database. It may be coming from an OData service of sorts, or maybe an Excel workbook or something like that. So we can work with data outside of SharePoint and outside of Microsoft 365, build a report on it with things like conditional formatting and grouping and calculator columns and things like that, all without writing any code. And also it allows you to build charts as well. So you could build surface charts and bar charts, pie charts, donut charts, that sort of thing, either with inside modern SharePoint pages or also within Teams as well. So excuse me, there are a couple of products that we'll start off with. We're then going to move across to the Social Squared tool, and Social Squared tool is a discussion forum or discussion board product. Those of you that have got a history with SharePoint will know that the SharePoint discussion list is a little bit short in providing all of the features that most of us like with inside a discussion forum. So Social Squared fills in all of those gaps and makes sure that you've got this structured way where you can build a platform for people to have discussions, basically. And if you think about how people do have discussions, one of them is email. Fortunately, at the moment, probably most people can't tap the person on the shoulder next to them, sat on the next desk. So we resort to email, and if we have a question, we're going to write an email to somebody else, and that person is obviously going to respond to it. And then the only people that have really benefited is the person that asked the question and the person that responded to that question. So everybody else is ignored. So we could have people coming up with the same question time and time again, and of course absorbing time and so on of our colleagues. So the whole idea of Social Squared is to provide a platform for that. You might be thinking, well, surely Teams already has the posts tab, or what was the chat tab. So why not have your discussion there? So this is a valid question. If we go into the chat tab or post tab, what you'll notice is it's just a continual feed of posts from people, and it might be updates, it might be what people are up to, it could be a little bit of banter within the office or remote workers. And what you're not going to do is obviously scroll up to see if anybody's actually posted a question that has the answer that you're looking for. So that's really the idea is if you go onto the internet today, if you're looking for maybe a bread recipe, be fairly topical. If we were looking for a bread recipe, you could Google that, and what you're probably going to come across is a bunch of recipe sites, but also maybe also some forums where somebody's posted a good recipe and then other people have responded to it. And yeah, you'll see likes and you'll see votes and things like that, and that's exactly the type of features that we're looking for here. So we're going to serve the employees of your organization by providing a forum where if you do have a question, you can search for it, or you can navigate to the appropriate forum and look for a sort of structured answer, maybe something that's been marked as answered as well, or marked as featured, and then you'll be able to obviously get your problem solved and help others as well in the future that may also be struggling with the same question. So that's social squared, and we'll be taking a look at that. And then we're going to wrap up using or looking at the permissions management tool, and this is DeliverPoint, which recently has been made available for Teams as well, to use Teams as a platform in order to manage permissions centrally, both in your Teams environment and also your SharePoint environment. So that resolves things like sharing links and truly understanding who's got permissions to your content. And if somebody was to leave the organization or something like that, it offers us bulk management as well for things like transferring permissions, copying permissions, granting permissions, and that sort of thing. Okay, so they're the 4 products that we're going to be taking a look at. So we're going to start off with the Lightning Conductor. And as mentioned, the Lightning Conductor, it's effectively a content aggregation tool. It provides you with sort of code-free ways of building the reports with conditional formatting, grouping, calculator columns, that sort of thing. So you can go to one central place and see the content that is relevant to you. And like I said, it's not just SharePoint lists anymore. It's also been extended to graph and search as well. So it is available to pretty much all versions of SharePoint, actually. Looks like I got a little bit bored when I got down to version 2010. It was available for versions of SharePoint prior to that, but these are sort of more current ones that we're seeing organizations use. So yeah, modern SharePoint and also Teams is really what we're going to be focusing on. So here it is in SharePoint. This is just a quick screenshot of a aggregation, and this is a report or a view that you may build using the product. This is basically doing a task aggregation, and it's coming from SharePoint lists, so lots of different task lists. And if you imagine the scenario there, we could have lots of different task lists in lots of different sites, and we don't have the time in our everyday lives to go and visit every single site to see if somebody's assigned a task to us, and so on. So what we do is we build a single view. We can see all of those tasks. We can use conditional formatting to see which of those are perhaps high priority, which ones we need to work on first. We can see the progress of those tasks as well. So the percent complete column formatted as a data bar here with the Lightning Conductor. And we've also got some grouping going on as well. So I can see all the completed tasks by user and then all the in progress tasks by user and so on. So I'll show you how to build that, but I'm going to show you how to build that with inside Teams. And yeah, things like conditional formatting, as I mentioned already, is very easy to do. You don't have to resort to any form of JSON code or anything like that to apply this. So that's basically the slides for this. So I'd rather sort of do everything as a demonstration here. So we're going to jump into Teams now and take a look at the Lightning Conductor. On this slide, which you'll see from the recording of this webinar later, here's a couple of links where you can go through and download the trial of the Lightning Conductor, or if you wanted to make sure you get the latest version, if you're an existing customer, this is where you can go to get that. Okay, so you'll find it anyway if you go to lightningtools.com and navigate to the Lightning Conductor. So I'm just going to Alt-Tab and jump into Microsoft Teams here. And where we might use the Lightning Conductor in Teams is actually as a Teams tab. So I've already added a single instance of the Lightning Conductor to get us started here. So as I click onto the Teams tab of the Lightning Conductor, you can see I'm already providing an aggregation of tasks coming from some task lists within inside of SharePoint. And to show you how this is configured, what I can do is just click the downward arrow here, and I'm going to go into settings, and that launches the side panel where we can go through and start to configure some different views of content that we might want to aggregate. But we can also go through and style this view as well. And in order to get started and build a view, it's just a case of clicking on the plus symbol here and then the cog, and that launches a quick configuration where you start building a new view. And you can see here we can do things like aggregate documents or tasks, events, announcements, messages, users, things like that. And depending on what we select as the type of data that we want to aggregate, you'll see we've built in some common refinements as well. Now, you don't have to stick with these. There's all sorts of filters. You can add and remove columns. You can create calculated columns and all sorts of things in here to build a view that you want. These are just really starting points to get you going. So if you wanted to do a document aggregation from all documents, maybe from a hub site and associated sites, current site collection or current tenant, things like that, we can do that and bring back the content. And most of the different types of data will have a choice of how you want to display the content. So the tasks here are displayed inside a grid view, but equally I could display them inside a calendar view, and documents I can display in a tile view where you actually get to see a preview of the documents and so on. So you'll see that those styles there of how you're going to display it will vary depending on the type of list that you're going to aggregate. And it's not just limited to those. Notice at the bottom here is an advanced mode, and we're going to dive into that. And I'll show you where we can be very granular then about what type of list we want to aggregate. And this could be based on custom content types or custom lists, but also results coming from search and results coming from the Microsoft Graph as well. Okay, so I'm just going to come out of that for a second and show you how we can go through and style one of these reports. And what I want to do here is just add a little bit of conditional formatting. I want to show off some new functionality as well. So I'll start off with a very simple way of doing conditional formatting. So we've got here the priority column, and what I might want to do on that one is just make sure that maybe we've got those different colors for different priorities so that we can see where we need to pay our attention. So in here I can set the priority equal to high, so that's my first condition. And I can set colors, foreground and background colors. I can change font alignments and fonts. I've got data bars and I've also got icons. And I'm a real big fan of the icons. So in here, I've got lots of different icons that I can choose. And I'm going to go with the dot here. And once we've selected the icon, we get to apply color to that icon and so on. So in here, I've got a list of colors. Now the fore color for that icon is it defaults to the current theme that's applied to this site, or I can actually go through and choose a different color. So in here I'm going to select a bright red and save that, and then I get to position where I want the icon to be. So I can have like a small icon in the top left or top right or far left or far right of the cell. So I'm going to go with the far left here and hit save. So I'll just add a couple more conditions so we can go through and choose a dot for each color. So in here we'll have an amber color and also have that on the left, and that will be for our normal priority tasks. And then for our low priority tasks, we're going to go for a green icon. So we'll go through and select green and hit save and save again. And there you go, we've got some conditional formatting going on inside that report. And also for the conditional formatting, we could also do things like the data bars as mentioned. So it's really straightforward. They don't have to be reliant upon a condition, but we can go through and set the maximum value for our data bar. We can show or hide the underlying value. If we don't need to see that, we can get rid of that. And there you go, we've now got a progress indicator of how these tasks are performing. And grouping is very straightforward as well. So in here, we can just come down to group by. You can group by as many of these different levels as you like across each of the columns. Speaking of columns, if you want to show more, you can come down here to show a column, and this will show all of the available columns from that list type. So I can drop in there the start date. We can move the start date around. So if we want to move it left, we can do that, and so on. And yeah, hopefully get you the idea. You can also do all your date formatting and things like that as well. So if I jump into the more settings here, we can set the display format to short date, and likewise for the due date, we'll do the same there. So just drop that to short date, and there we have it. So lots of different ways of configuring a view. Now, what I want to show you is, like I said, a brand new feature. This is, we've basically got web part connections or dynamic data connectors created through the SPFX client-side web part. And what we can do with that is apply a filter or apply conditional formatting or select a view. So on the assigned to here, what I'm going to do is actually make any tasks that are assigned to me stand out. I don't want to hide all the other tasks. I just want to see which ones are mine. So coming down to column settings here, I'll go down to the formatting, and we're going to say assigned to is like. That's better than equals, because you could be among other people inside the cell. So it's going to contain me basically. And I'm logged in as an account called Lightning Tools. So I could just put in Lightning Tools, but that would be hard coded. So what I'm going to do here is select this little connector symbol, and that allows me to choose a data source. Now inside of SharePoint, this can even be another web part. And some good news for you, we've built a suite of filter web parts which have been missing from Microsoft 365. So if you remember back to SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint 2016 and so on, we had some filter web parts that could provide connectors to consuming web parts. Well, we've basically done that, and they'll be available for free. And they should be available by the end of this month. But in the meantime, while I'm in Teams, I can still use this feature. So even though I've not got other web parts on a page, I can use things like the page environment, where I could get things like the query string parameters, or I could get the current user information or site properties and things like that. So site properties includes things like, as you can see, the title, description, logo, and things. Anything with a value basically that I can provide that is going to give me a value that I can apply conditional formatting against. What I'm going to do is go to the current user information and obtain the current user name. So that's my condition, it's the current username. So checking whether the assigned to field contains it, and if it does, I'll display an icon. And with that icon, I'll actually make this one the theme color, and we'll hit save again, and there we go. We can see conditional formatting has been set against Lightning Tools. So I've got a little indicator there as to which are my tasks, and I can perform them. So that's working with some SharePoint lists and what have you. What I want to do here is actually just change this one. I'm going to do a similar thing, but this is going to be with planner tasks. So obviously not SharePoint lists. We're going to jump into the advanced mode rather than this quick configuration. And in the advanced mode, rather than using the object model, CSOM, in order to aggregate content, I'm going to basically go in and use the Microsoft Graph here. So notice that you could use search and you could use graph. So I'm going to use graph, and I'm going to build the results in a grid view. You can, if you want to, you've seen the sort of thing that you can do in the grid view without writing any code, but if you just can't help yourself, if you want to write code, you've got options. So you can build a JSON view and so on. What I'm going to do is just come across to the data source tab here, and this is where we can see lots of different graph entities. So I've got things like the OneDrive items, I've got calendars, I've got messages, which are my email messages. I've got user information, so I could go and explore all the different users that are internal versus external users and things like that. But we're going to come down here to planner task and build ourselves a query. And when I click onto that plus to build a query, I can actually go through and build a custom query. So you could use the Graph Explorer to play around here and get a query that works for you. But we've also got some predefined ones. So there's one here called user planner tasks that we've built in. And if I just save that, that's going to take the current user. So you can see here we've got me/planner/tasks. And now I can go to the columns tab and start selecting some of the different columns that would come from the graph entity of planner. So I've got things like percent complete, due date, maybe created date and things like that, or completed date up there. There's title and so on. And we can drag these columns into the order that we want them to appear in. So left to right. and top to bottom obviously is left to right. And we can go through and set whether they're sortable. We can sort them, we can filter them, and so on. And the ellipsis here will give us some other options that we've got available to us for that column type as well. So we've also got the ability to add a calculator column. So perhaps if you wanted to build your own calculation or expression, maybe working out the difference between the start date and the due date or something, you can go through and do that. And then on the display tab here is where you can really sort of start to refine the view. So I'm not going to spend too much more time on this. I'm just going to put in, obviously we've got title in there. We'll have created date, just so it looks a little bit neater. And we can have due date and percent complete and so on. So again, we've got grouping, conditional formatting. You can build summary functions at the end of all of these and what have you, if you want to use those. And again, you've got all those sort of formats here where we can set those to short date, etc. So yeah, you can refine the view and do the grouping and linking and all that sort of stuff. When we hit save, that has now created for me a drop down here where I can select planner tasks, and there we go. It's unformatted at the moment, but as you've seen, I could then start going in and adding some data bars, conditional formatting and things like that, and bring some content in from elsewhere. So that's a quick tour of the type of thing that you can do with the Lightning Conductor. And there's lots more that you can do with it. If you're interested in learning more, just go onto the Lightning Tools website, navigate your way to the Lightning Conductor. There are some sort of training videos in there as well as the ability to book a private demo, and then we can sort of go in and see what we can do to help meet your needs. Okay, so let's jump into another product here. And the next one is going to take less time to explain because it's pretty much a similar thing, like I say, but we're just bringing in some data from outside of SharePoint. So what we're going to do is just Alt-Tab back into, sorry, just bear with me. Yeah, so this is a tool that will give you a grid, just like the Lightning Conductor as I mentioned, but also gives you the ability to work with charts and things like that as well. So that's where we're going to focus our efforts here. We'll connect to an OData service, we'll connect to an Excel file, and we'll build some reports with inside Teams. So we're going to click onto the plus symbol to add a new tab, and in here we'll select the data viewer. Okay, so we've got the data viewer on there, and we can hit save, and that will add the data viewer to my page here. And now we can go through and configure it. So we'll hit the configuration button, and you can see here we've got some different data sources to work with. So if I was going to go with an OData service, we could select that, and I'll just show you very quickly how we can take a service like this one, load some entities coming from that service, and it could be something like the products. This is a Northwind database. So I can select the columns that I want from that service. We can also, again, add a calculated column if we want to. And then on the display, we can go through and refine our view with colors and formatting and things like that. So very easily, we can build a view. If you are connecting to a SQL Azure database as well, you can enable all the CRUD operations, so you can do insert, update, and delete, and things like that if you want to as well. So there's a report coming from an OData service, and like I said, just like before, if you wanted to format any of these, so if we wanted the unit price to be in currency, we can go through and set that, and units in stock, we might want to add the conditional formatting, so we're highlighting things that are low stock and so on. You've just seen that in the Lightning Conductor, a very, very similar thing. So what we'll do here is actually just reconfigure this one, and I'm going to reconfigure this one for an Excel file. And instead of in a grid view, I'm going to build a chart. So we'll select the chart view here, come back to the data source, and I'm going to navigate down to site collection here. And so we can go and grab an Excel file from anywhere in our environment. So here I've got one called sales. So we'll select that. And I can select a sheet. So I've got sheet 1 and sheet 2 that contain data. And it's picked up the cell range for me so it knows where my data resides on that Excel sheet. So we'll hit save, and we'll go to the columns. And basically, we've got a month column, which contains January through to about May, and then we've got sales, cost of sales, and profit. So I'm just going to select all of those columns. Again, we could do some filters. We could also do a calculated column on this and build that into the chart as well. But I'm just going to come down to the display, and you can see here that I could just actually hit save, and we'd have a chart already displayed on the page. So what I want to do is just customize this so it looks a little bit better. And to do that, what we can do is hit the icon on each series that forms the chart. So here we've got the sales, which I'm going to actually change that from a line to a column. Then I'll change the color to something other than bright purple. Okay, so we've got blue. There we are. We could pick a nice bright color for profit, but maybe leave that as a line. There we go. And for our cost of sales, we could maybe make that a little area. So there we go. We've got a nice sort of opaque area there where we've built a chart, and hit save, and there we go. We've now got a chart made available to a Teams tab. So if you did have a sales team or something like that working remotely at the moment, this would be ideal. So maybe they could see the way the sales are looking for your organization as a whole, or something like that. So very easily to configure, and we can go back and reconfigure at any point. So if we wanted to change that, maybe we could take out some of the different things from the chart, maybe change it to a pie chart or something like this. If we go into the chart settings, we can make that 3D instead of 2D. And we can also take some of these different segments. So if I was, what month are we in? April. So we could take April, for example, and maybe offset that part of the chart, and save that in Teams, so everybody gets to see that as well inside the environment. Okay, so really quick and easy. Anybody can do it. It's not like Power BI where you really have to sort of know what you're doing. This is a great way for business users to build a chart or build a report on some existing line of business data that may belong inside their team, or in their SharePoint site or something like that. Okay, so that's the data viewer, and as you've seen, it's easy to configure. This is where you can go to find out a little bit more about it. So if you go onto lightningtools.com again, and you'll find your way into the products menu to the data viewer client-side web part, and you'll see some examples of how that works. One thing we're also working on, just to let you know about this one, is for the Lightning Conductor and the data viewer to actually connect to each other, so that you can aggregate lists using the Lightning Conductor and then build charts on that aggregation using the data viewer. Okay, so we're on Social Squared. So Social Squared is a discussion forum tool or discussion board. And one of the cool things about this recently is we've not just made it available for Teams as a Teams tab like these two products that you've just seen, but also as a personal app inside of Microsoft Teams as well. So the personal app means it's actually residing in Teams. We're using Teams as a platform to see it, but it doesn't belong to a team. So you've got a wider audience, and as you go into the Teams admin center, you can actually pin this to make it available to groups of users as well, so that they automatically get the app, and they can go and access it from within Teams. So Social Squared, it's a modern web part built into the SharePoint framework as a client-side web part, so you can put it onto modern and classic pages inside of SharePoint. As you can see, you can design your different forum groups. So this one, this example is based around human resources. So we've got here a group called benefits, another group called skills and training, with some different forums in there. So medical, pension, childcare, wellness programs, and so on. So if anybody wants to make a post about those, maybe it's a question. So how do I get childcare? They could go into the childcare forum, post that question, and other people could respond. Mark the response as answered if it solves your problem, and also it could be moderated. So if we post the wrong question in the wrong forum, then that can be moved around by moderators and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's it inside of SharePoint. Also inside of Teams, this is where you can actually add it as a personal app. So it can be added as a Teams tab where it's available for sort of up to 250 people that are working inside that team, or you can make it available to your organization through a personal app. And finally, there's also an app as well called Social Squared that you can download from the Apple Store or the Android Store, whatever that one's called. So you can download the app, and that gives you this rich environment where you can go through and post from your phone and moderate from your phone and have all the features that you have inside the web part. So let's take a look at this one. So I'm going to again alt tab into Teams here. So to start off with, we could just add it to this team. So in any channel in the team, so there's Social Squared, we can select that and save that. So this gets created with inside my team. Okay, so we're starting off from scratch. We have no forum groups built, no forums or anything. I'm going to show you how easy it is to start to build that kind of functionality. So maybe we could come up here to the forum settings, and in here we could add a new forum group. So for my team, there's all sorts of things that we could discuss. So maybe we could have some working from home or a working from home forum group. And inside that working from home forum group, I want to add some forums. So I'll click onto view forums and add a new forum. So maybe we want to talk about technology. So how perhaps you can get your hands on things like phones and computers and screens and things like that you need to work from home. We could optionally set up a moderator for this forum as well. So I'll click on to add, and we've now got that forum created. So another forum, so we've got technology there. We could have some best practices. So the things that you should not do when you're having a video meeting. We've seen a few of those on social media. So we can go through and add a forum for that. And then maybe we can add another forum group as more of a sort of fun one to keep our employees engaged and everything. And everybody's all of a sudden a cook. So what I'm going to do is add a new forum group called recipe, or recipes I should have put. And then we can click onto forums, add a new forum, and then in here we'll have cakes. Okay, and add that one, and then we can have another one for bread. Of course, the two things that people are doing right now. Okay, so we've got that created, and now we've got a discussion board that we can use. So there's a few different styles and things like that you can refine in here. If you are using this inside a SharePoint site and inside of Teams, or you're also using it inside a SharePoint site across multiple pages, what you can do for each page or within Teams is you can also specify which forum group is kind of relevant to this page or to Teams. So even though both of these forum groups might show up inside a SharePoint page, I could have just one of those forum groups showing up here in Teams by specifying the forum group that I want to display. There's different types of rich text editor options, which you'll see the rich text editor in a moment. We can control some of the different refinements, such as how many topics per page do we want, how many recent activities do we display, things like that. We can enable attachments. We can specify what type of files we're allowed to be attached and what's the maximum upload size and things like that. And then we can also set up badges as well. So the more posts you create, the more things that you like, responses that you do, etc., will all work towards granting you badges so people can recognize you as perhaps a subject matter expert within a particular category. So of course we're going to create a cake. So we'll go down to cakes. I'll add a new topic, and in here we could have maybe some banana cake. So this is yeah, on that day where you go to the supermarket, you line up for hours and you think you're going to buy all this healthy food, you buy lots of bananas and then they start going brown and you're wondering what to do with them. So here you go, you can make some banana cake. So in here we could put in what the recipe is. So I'm just going to copy paste from my other screen here, a little recipe, and you can see that it sort of keeps the formatting from where I'm copying from. And we could also copy and paste images and things like that into the post as well. So we can drop that on, we can position it, we can resize it and do whatever we like. And yeah, if we want to go and highlight the word sugar because sugar's bad for you, we could do this. You could put in some emotion icons and things like that, like flour, self-raising flour, maybe a little laughing face because there's no way you're going to be able to buy any of that at the moment. So yeah, we've got the full rich text capabilities. You can insert videos, so just dropping in the video link in there and so on. So at the bottom here, we can also go and tag that. So I could tag that with cake, I could tag it with banana, butter, sugar, etc. and add that post. So that's now created. Of course, we could add as many as we like. They're all going to start appearing down here. And if we go into this one, you'll see some of the different features that we've got. So we've got the ability to rate it. We can like it. I could vote, but I can't vote on my own cake. So I could vote there. We've got the tags. Down at the bottom here, we can attach files and I can reply, edit, etc. So if I reply to this one, just put, wow, that looks yummy. Maybe, but I have no flour or something. So we could add that, reply, and there we go. We can see the response there. So if this was somebody else that had replied, maybe I had asked a question and they provided me with an answer, I could mark that as answered. So you can see here, anybody reading this thread could see that that is marked as answered. And they would also be able to see that from within inside the forum as well. So as we navigate back to cakes, it's marked as answered somewhere. So in there is where we can do that. You can just show the answered post. So if you want to jump straight to an answer, you can do. We've got things like a threaded view, which will indent each response, so it becomes obvious as to what you're replying to. We can make it sticky, pardon the pun. So this will keep the post at the top of the forum as the most relevant one. We can lock it, which means nobody else can respond anymore. And you can also subscribe to it and so on as well. And there's no setup for that. This is inside of SharePoint technically. So if we subscribe and somebody else replies to one of these posts, I'm going to be notified that they replied to it and so on. Okay, so that's the sort of thing that you can do with Social Squared. And down on the left-hand side here, we've got popular topics, we've got recent activities, I've got the most active users, I have a tag cloud where we can jump straight to some of the content. You can also search it. So up here, if we do a search on banana, we can find any posts with banana in it, and we can refine the search results based on date and time and things like that as well. Okay, so that's the type of thing that you can use Social Squared for. And over on the left-hand side here, you'll notice, like I say, it's also available as a personal app. So this one resides within a team and has the scope of that team, but over on the left, we could actually add it as a personal app. So before I go into it, just to show you that as we select the more apps and go to Built for Lightning Tools, you can see a lot of the different Lightning Tools apps in here. And taking the Lightning Conductor, which isn't available as a personal app, you can notice that you can only add that to a team as a Teams tab. Whereas if we go to Deliver Point or Social Squared, this is available as a tab or as a personal app. And we can then decide what we want to do, add it to a team or add it as a personal app. So we've already got that over on the left. So I can go into Social Squared here. And do the same thing. So go through, create our forum group and so on. So we might have like an onboarding one. and so on. And there we go. So people can come in here, they can create their posts and so on, and it's for everybody to see. It doesn't belong to just a single team. All right, so that's the kind of thing there that we can do with Social Squared. And what I'd like to do now is take you into our final product, which is DeliverPoint for Teams, and we'll take a look at how that can be used to maintain, manage, and report on permissions, both in SharePoint and also in Teams as well. So DeliverPoint is a permissions tool that isn't just for SharePoint admins. It's not just for tenant admins or farm admins. This has actually been designed for them, but also for the people managing the content as well. So anybody that has full control effectively to content and has a responsibility, therefore, of managing the permissions to that content, they can use this tool too. And here it is inside of SharePoint. You can see that it has these contextual dialog boxes, so you don't have to actually go to a third-party application that sits outside of SharePoint. You don't have to go to a site collection that's not in context with the content. You can actually report against the content itself. And yeah, from there, that obviously takes out that sort of challenge of navigating to the right content when you're trying to report on it. So we can pull up permission reports. We can see exactly how people are permissioned. We can manage those permissions either singularly or in bulk. So singularly, it might just be that we can see somebody's been given permissions and they shouldn't have them, so I could remove that permission. Or maybe somebody's leaving the organization, they've been with us for years, they've got permissions everywhere, and I don't have time to go through and figure out where those permissions may have been assigned. I just want to transfer that guy's permissions to somebody else, or just delete the permissions and so on. And that's the sort of thing that you can do with DeliverPoint to save a tremendous amount of time. So here it is in SharePoint. You can access it either contextually or centrally. So if you're managing permissions centrally, you've also got the ability to sort of browse through your different site collections and teams and private channels and things like that. And you can report on these objects centrally as well. You'll see in here we've got things like any object that has unique permissions we highlight, any that inherits permissions is dimmed, so it becomes obvious where you need to focus your efforts when you are reporting across these different objects and discovering those permissions. So let's take a look. First of all, I'm just going to jump into a SharePoint site because I want to just take this opportunity to show you a couple of new features as well of DeliverPoint. So one of them, just to show you the sort of contextual side, I can discover permissions against the site. As you can see, that's done in a couple of clicks, and we can see sort of how people got permissioned and so on. So demo user 4 is permissioned via an Active Directory security group, which is nested inside of a SharePoint group, and that's how the edit permissions came about. If you used SharePoint to report on this site, you wouldn't even know that demo user 4 was permissioned unless you knew that person was inside the accounts payable Active Directory security group. So from there, I can select that and I can manage it and so on using the actions menu at the top here. We can also report with inside SharePoint lists and libraries. And to show you one of the biggest challenges actually is when I select a single object inside of SharePoint and come down here to manage access. Okay, so we get the report over on the right hand side here, and of course we go to that advanced report and what have you. But we can only do that on an object at a time. And most people have more objects in their document libraries than they would care to imagine. So notice what's different here is I could select as many of these items actually as I like. And when I click onto the menu, manage access has disappeared. So you can't use SharePoint to report on these in bulk, but you can use DeliverPoint. So I could hit the discover permissions and, oh, for some reason that failed. Had to be at least one issue in there. Don't know why that was. Let's try that one more time. Okay. Love the embarrassing moments. All right. We got it. So in here we've got the discover permissions going on. We've got a nice little feature as well where any objects that inherit their permissions are dimmed. Any with unique permissions are in full color here. So we can see which documents out of the ones that I selected have unique permissions and which ones don't. And again, report on those. But also one of the new features that I wanted to show you was actually in the top right hand corner here, which is an external sharing report. So this is where somebody inside a document library may have actually gone through and just created a sharing link for anybody. And that's something, of course, that has to be enabled. You can't just do that if it hasn't. Sorry, just wait for the menu to load there. There we go. So if I hit share on a document, notice in this this top section I can choose anyone with a link basically, and I could set an expiry date on the link or set password. But the default here is anybody, or sorry, default once I've selected anyone with a link is to allow editing. So if I just apply that and copy the link, that item there is now available for anybody to edit. So if anybody's done that inside your SharePoint sites, what you can do is come up here and go to the sharing links report. And this shows you anything that is made available through a sharing link. So I've got the name of the file. We've got the date and time. So this is one that we just shared at the moment. Who it was shared by. We've got the sharing type. So this is anyone with a link can edit. Permission is contribute. And then we've got the members. So this one I can't expand or collapse because it's just anyone. And that's actually the SharePoint group that gets created when you click share. So it's basically this, you're going to end up with lots of these different SharePoint groups in your environment with a GUID as part of their name. So that one's anonymous. As you can see, anonymous edit from the name of that SharePoint group. So anybody going into that SharePoint group will be able to edit this document, but at the moment also anybody can. But some of these where it's people in the organization or specific people, which could be external users as well, we can see them in there that are already added to those groups. And if I don't like that, I can go through and select it, and from the actions menu, come down and delete that sharing link. And that has now deleted it. So whenever we go to that sharing links report again, we can see that that sharing link has now disappeared and no longer a threat to us. Okay, so that's the tool inside of SharePoint. If we jump into Teams, we've made it available here as a personal app as well. So you can jump into Deliver Point, and you could use it to manage your SharePoint permissions. As we scroll down, you'll see also we've got Office 365 groups, and at the bottom here we've got Teams. So these are all our teams. So what we could do here is select as many of these as we like as a scope, and from the actions menu, if we had somebody that was leaving and we knew that they were a member of these teams, I could actually transfer the membership from the person that's leaving to the person joining, and then they get those permissions. And it's not just to the team itself, but obviously the underlying SharePoint site that it belongs to, with any of the lists and libraries that make up that site, any of the folders and things like that will also be affected there. So you can choose who you want to transfer permissions from, who you want to transfer them to. We can support rollback as well. So when we do roll this back, basically it'll undo the operation, put it back to how it was again. So it's a good sort of bit of security that you have in there when you're producing that. So like I say, it's available for Teams, so you can navigate down into the content as well, see what has unique permissions, which ones don't, and so on, and manage all of that. Okay, so that's a quick tour of those products inside of Microsoft Teams. And what I'm going to do now is just open up to see if anybody's got any questions on any of those products or any feedback that you want to give or anything like that. And the way that you can do this is either by posting a question. So at the moment I see one from Elliot Gold, but I think he resolved it from the looks of it. Okay, so just one question in there. But the question was how, it's a great question actually, so I'm going to answer it to be the benefit of everybody else. So that is, how was the Lightning Conductor added to the Teams tab? So obviously you saw me do that when I added the data viewer, so the same way, but how do you get it there in the first place actually? So let me just Alt tab back into the browser window again. It's through the app catalog. Well, there's two ways of doing it. One is through your app catalog. So if I just jump into my app catalog here, so my app catalog, this tenant's been around for a while, so I'm still on a classic looking app catalog. But when we drag and drop a solution in here, so if we take, for example, here's the Lightning Conductor, so I can select that. And when we come up to the Files tab, so you drag the SPFX package into the App Store, and then you have the Sync to Teams button, and that will take care of any personal apps as well as any apps available for Teams tabs. So then that's available both inside of SharePoint and also Teams for you to add wherever you like then. So really straightforward in dragging and dropping that in. If it's something that is just Teams or you only want to use it in Teams, you can come down to Apps and upload a custom app. So as you upload here, you're looking for a package that you're going to make available just within inside of Teams, and it will then appear under this item. So in here we've got the built for Lightning Tools product demo, which is the name of my tenant. Okay, so hopefully that answered that question. Okay, so there's another question about, can I add columns to Social Squared? So in addition to the tags, sorry, my window's not looking too good for the chat pane here. So basically, actually, the answer is no anyway. But funnily enough, it is something that we discussed today in the Social Squared R&D meeting. We talked about the possibility of adding polls and adding questions to Social Squared. So I would say for that one, it's very early stages, but watch this space. It may be something that we could add as well. But yeah, certainly for search, which I think is what your question is related to, yeah, you could use it for that purpose, or also for classifications and things like that too. Okay, so there's another question about the possibility of compressing threaded discussions into notes-like format. So not too much white space. Okay, so just trying to think about that one. So in Social Squared, where you've got the conversations. In fact, let's go to the team here. So obviously there's not too much content, but basically compressing this this view, I presume. There isn't a way. So I guess, yeah, the answer is no. This is the kind of look and feel. So the white space, I guess there's just this white space here, and then you've got the signature area before the text appears. But yeah, I don't know. It's good feedback. I'll look at that one in the next R&D meeting. So thank you for that question. All right. Okay, so it looks like another one is Facebook. Yeah, don't know if that was one that I should say. Okay. Yeah. All right. I think we're good there. So thank you for the questions. I hope you got all the questions answered. If you want to get in touch with me, if you do have any other questions that you would like to ask, please email me. My email address is brett@lightningtools.com. So drop me a line. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions from you there as well. So thanks everybody for joining, and I look forward to seeing you again at some point. All right, take care. Bye-bye.